The stars stretched endlessly across the blackness of space, tiny points of light that twinkled like distant fires. The sleek human vessel, Aurora's wing, cut through the void with precision, carrying its precious cargo, Princess Lyra of the Solara Dominion. She sat quietly in the observation deck, her delicate hands resting against the glass, eyes tracing the passing stars. Despite her young age, her expression carried the weight of her people's future. Her people looked to her for guidance, and every decision she made mattered, not just to her, but to the fate of entire star systems. "Princess Lyra," a calm, confident voice said behind her. "We're approaching the Draven sector. It's a shortcut, but it's risky." Lyra turned to see Captain Eric Dane, her human escort, standing at ease. His dark hair fell slightly into his eyes, but it didn't hide the sharp intelligence in his gaze. Humans were different from her people, stronger, unpredictable, and in many ways dangerous, but Auric had proven himself more capable than any alien bodyguard she had ever known. "I trust your judgment, Captain," Lyra said softly, though her voice carried a hint of curiosity. Humans, she had learned, often did things her people wouldn't dare. Auric gave a small smile. "Trust me, Princess. I've never lost a mission, and I don't plan to start now." The calm confidence in his voice was reassuring, but Lyra's instincts told her something was coming. The Draven sector had always been notorious for pirates and mercenary fleets. It was a shortcut, yes, but a dangerous one, especially for someone as important as her. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert on the ship's console. Red lights flashed and an urgent siren echoed through the cabin. "Captain, sensors detect multiple incoming ships closing fast," the navigator shouted. Auric's face grew serious, and in a single motion he was at the controls. Evasive maneuvers. Full power to engines. The sleek hum of the Aurora's wing rose as the ship twisted and turned, darting through the asteroid field that marked the edge of the Draven sector. Outside, the attackers revealed themselves, sleek black ships armed with weapons that could pierce the hull of most military vessels. They were not just pirates. They were professionals, precise and deadly. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She had been on diplomatic missions before, but never had her life felt so directly threatened. She gripped the edge of her seat as the ship jolted violently. Auric's hands moved with the precision of a master musician, guiding the ship through the narrow gaps between massive asteroids. "Hold on, Princess. We're not going down without a fight." The attackers fired their first volley and laser blasts streaked across space. The Aurora's wing shuddered as energy shields absorbed the impact. Sparks flew from the console as Auric adjusted the ship's trajectory, narrowly avoiding another hit. Lyra watched him, awe and fear mingling in her eyes. He wasn't just a human. He was a force of nature, calm under pressure, precise and unafraid. She had never seen anyone fight like this, not even the finest warriors in her father's guard. "Princess, stay low," Auric ordered, though his voice was calm. "We need to get behind that asteroid belt. It'll give us cover." Lyra obeyed, ducking into the lower cabin. She could hear the ship's systems straining, the engines whining under the stress. Every fiber of her being screamed fear. But she also felt something else. A strange sense of safety, knowing Auric was protecting her. Minutes felt like hours as the chase continued. The attackers were relentless, adjusting their tactics, anticipating their maneuvers. But Auric always seemed one step ahead, predicting every move, exploiting every weakness. Finally, with a daring maneuver through a narrow asteroid canyon, he managed to shake the fleet, sending them scattering into the void. Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Captain, how did you—" Auric gave a small, tired smile. "Experience. And maybe a little luck. But mostly, Princess, it's about staying calm. Panic gets people killed." Lyra nodded slowly, a new respect for the human growing in her heart. Her people often looked down on humans, calling them reckless and fragile. But Auric had just proven that humans could be brave, intelligent, and resourceful, qualities that were often underestimated. Before she could speak again, a warning tone sounded from the console. Auric's face darkened. "That was too easy," he muttered. "This was no random attack. Someone planned this." Lyra frowned. "Planned? Who would dare?" Auric's eyes narrowed. "Someone with inside knowledge. They knew our route, our speed, even the ship's shielding capabilities. Whoever it was, they weren't just trying to capture you, they were trying to kill you." The words sent a chill down Lyra's spine. Assassins within her own court? Or perhaps enemies from outside, spies working to destabilize her father's empire. Either way, the threat was real and closer than ever. "We'll need to land," Arik said, "and repair the engines before they regroup. There's a neutral planet nearby. Not much population, but it'll do for now." Lyra followed him to the cockpit, watching as he deftly plotted a course. The journey to the neutral planet was tense, every moment filled with the possibility of another ambush. Yet through it all, Arik's calm presence was a shield in itself. As the planet came into view, a small, rugged world with sprawling deserts and rocky mountains, Lyra felt a strange sense of relief. They had survived the first threat, but she knew this was only the beginning. Arik skillfully guided the Aurora's wing through the planet's atmosphere, landing on a flat plateau that offered some cover from prying eyes. Dust and rock swirled around them as the engines powered down. For the first time in hours, they could breathe. Lyra stepped out of the ship, feeling the planet's strange warmth on her skin. She turned to Arik, gratitude and curiosity mixing in her gaze. You saved my life." Arik shook his head, his expression serious. "Princess, I didn't save you just because it's my job. I saved you because someone has to, and I plan to keep you safe until we know who's behind this." Lyra's eyes lingered on him, studying the human who had defied her expectations. There was something about him, something steady, fearless, and unwavering. She realized that humans might have strengths her own people didn't even recognize. As they began inspecting the ship's damaged systems, Arik's attention remained sharp, scanning for any signs of pursuit. He noticed subtle markings in the terrain outside, tracks that didn't belong to natural creatures. Someone had been here before them. "Princess, we're not alone," he said quietly, eyes narrowing. "We need to be careful. Whoever attacked us may have agents here on the planet." Lyra's heart raced, but she didn't falter. "Then we prepare," she said, surprising even herself. "We fight smart. We don't run." Arik allowed a small approving smile. "That's the spirit. I like a princess who can think on her feet." For the first time, Lyra felt a connection to this human, not just as a protector, but as someone she could trust with her life. In the dangerous galaxy they lived in, trust was rare and courage even rarer. And yet, here he was standing beside her, ready to face death itself to ensure her survival. High above, the stars continued to twinkle, indifferent to the struggles of small lives below. But in the shadow of the alien world, a human and a princess prepared to defy fate together, unaware that their actions were already catching the attention of someone even more powerful than their enemies, Queen Solara herself. And somewhere in the imperial capital, the Queen's advisors reported the failed ambush. A pause, a sharp intake of breath. Queen Solara's gaze lingered on the holographic display of Arik Dane. She had noticed the human who had shielded her daughter from death, and she had begun to wonder just how important this man might become in the future of her empire. The neutral planet stretched endlessly before them, a landscape of jagged rocks and dusty plains that seemed hostile and unwelcoming. Yet for Princess Lyra and Captain Arik Dane, it offered a rare opportunity, a chance to repair their ship, catch their breath, and perhaps uncover the truth behind the ambush. Arik stepped off the Aurora's wing, surveying the barren landscape with a sharp eye. "We'll need materials for repairs and a secure location to set up a temporary base. Keep your eyes open. This place may look empty, but nothing on a planet is ever truly empty." Lyra followed closely, her curiosity piqued. "Do you think the attackers will come after us here?" she asked, worry threading her voice. Arik shook his head. "If they were smart, they'd wait for reinforcements. But someone sent them after you for a reason. Whoever it was, they want more than just to scare you. They want to eliminate you." Lyra swallowed hard. The thought of assassination had always been abstract, something she read about in history records or heard about in political briefings. Now it was real, and yet in the face of danger, Arik's calm presence steadied her. She had come to realize that humans were not only strong but clever and unyielding when it mattered most. They set up a small perimeter using the ship's emergency supplies, crafting barriers and makeshift defensive turrets. Arik moved with efficiency and precision, directing Lyra to help where she could. Though inexperienced in survival tactics, she quickly adapted, learning to follow his instructions without hesitation. Hours passed, and the planet's twin suns began to dip below the horizon. The sky turned a fiery orange, casting long shadows across the jagged terrain. It was beautiful, but Lyra felt an undercurrent of tension. Something wasn't right. "Captain, over there," Lyra said, pointing to a series of strange tracks etched into the red dust. They weren't natural formations. The spacing, the direction, it was deliberate. Someone had been here. Recently. Auric crouched to inspect the tracks. "You're right. These are too fresh to be from animals, and they lead toward the canyon ridge. Someone is watching us, or preparing to strike." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "How do we know it's not the same people who attacked us?" Auric's expression hardened. "I don't know. But whoever it is, they're clever. And they won't give us time to wait for reinforcements. We need to be ready." The night fell quickly, and the planet's cold air crept in. Auric set up watch rotations, placing Lyra in the safest position he could manage while still keeping her near. The stars above twinkled, indifferent to the tension below. Hours passed with no attack, but just as Lyra began to relax, a low growl echoed from the nearby canyon. Shadows shifted, and strange, alien creatures emerged, tall, muscular, with thick armor-like skin and glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. Auric's hand went to the side of his belt, pulling out a compact energy blaster. "Stay behind me, Princess. These creatures aren't friendly." The creatures lunged, their movements fast and precise. Auric fired carefully, disabling several with well-aimed shots. Lyra instinctively picked up a piece of debris and swung it at one of the smaller attackers. Though her strike barely grazed it, Auric caught her arm. "Careful. Use your instincts, but don't take unnecessary risks. Watch and learn." The fight was intense, but Auric's tactics were flawless. He anticipated every move, using the terrain to his advantage, luring the creatures into traps and forcing them into narrow paths where their strength was less effective. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last of the creatures retreated into the darkness. Lyra's hands shook, but she felt a strange surge of admiration. You fought them like you've done this 100 times." Auric gave a small grin, wiping sweat from his brow. "I've trained for situations like this, but the truth is, I never underestimate my opponent. That's the difference between surviving and failing." Lyra's respect for him deepened. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability often gave them an edge. And Auric had proven he could protect her when all seemed lost. The following morning, they began examining the wreckage of the attackers' ships they had discovered near the canyon. Auric meticulously scanned the debris for clues, piecing together the events of the ambush. Among the remnants, he found something that made him pause. A small encrypted data chip, half buried under a rock. "Princess, I need to decode this. It might tell us who is behind the attack," Auric said, holding the chip carefully. Lyra watched him work, fascinated. Humans were capable of so much ingenuity. Auric connected the chip to a portable device and began deciphering the code. Minutes passed, and then his eyes narrowed. "Princess, it's worse than I thought. Someone inside your own court sent the attack fleet. They have connections we can't trace easily, and they want you dead." Lyra felt her stomach drop. Betrayal from within? The people she trusted most, those sworn to protect her, were involved in the plot. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend the enormity of the threat. Auric placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll handle this. You're not alone. But we have to move fast. They won't wait." Lyra nodded, her fear mingling with determination. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting in spite of it. And with Auric by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. That evening, as they prepared to rest in a small cave Auric had found for shelter, Lyra asked, "Captain, why are you helping me? You could walk away, go back to your fleet, and be safe." Auric looked at her, his expression serious. "Because you're important. Not just to me, but to everyone counting on you. Humans may not be part of your empire, but that doesn't mean we stand aside when someone threatens life or justice. And I promise to keep you safe. That's not a promise I break." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. Trust was rare in her world, and humans were often underestimated. Yet this one human had proven his worth, his loyalty, and his courage. Hours later, as she drifted into a light sleep, Lyra's mind wandered. She thought of the Queen, her mother, and wondered if she knew the depth of the danger her daughter faced. Somewhere in the imperial capital, Queen Solara's advisors were surely reporting the failed ambush, and someone, perhaps the Queen herself, was noticing the human who had shielded her daughter from death. The next day, Arik and Lyra ventured further into the planet to ensure no other threats lurked nearby. The terrain was rugged, but Arik's leadership made the journey manageable. Along the way, Lyra shared stories of her people, their history, and their struggles. She spoke of diplomacy, of threats from neighboring systems, and the constant pressure of royal life. Arik listened intently, asking questions that demonstrated both curiosity and respect. He did not dismiss her worries, nor did he underestimate her intelligence. In turn, Lyra began to see humans in a new light, not as fragile outsiders, but as capable allies who could match and even exceed the skill of her own people in many ways. By the time they returned to the makeshift base, they had developed a plan. Arik would begin repairing the Aurora's wing, while Lyra would observe, learning from him and preparing for whatever came next. "Captain," she said quietly, "I want to learn. Not just for survival, but to help you and to protect myself." Arik smiled faintly. "Good, you need to be ready. Knowledge is as important as strength. And from what I've seen, you're smarter than most people give you credit for." As the sun set again, casting long shadows across the rocky plains, both of them knew one thing: the danger was far from over. Someone inside the Empire wanted Lyra dead, and now they had proof. But more importantly, Lyra had discovered something else. Humans could be brave, clever, and utterly loyal. And Arik Dane, in particular, was someone who could change the course of history. High above, the stars watched silently, but on the planet below, a human and a princess prepared to confront hidden enemies, unaware that every action they took was slowly drawing the attention of Queen Solara herself. The Queen, always alert, would soon learn that this human was not just a protector, he was a force that could not be ignored. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to feel hope. Not just for survival, but for the future. The stars faded as the ship Aurora's wing pierced the upper atmosphere of the Solara Dominion's capital world. From orbit, the city gleamed like a jewel. Towers of polished crystal reflecting sunlight, streets buzzing with air vehicles, and the ever-watchful royal palace standing proudly at the center. Princess Lyra and Captain Arik Dane returned under diplomatic escort, their mission far from over. Arik's hands tightened on the controls as he guided the ship through the city's docking bays. "We're not safe yet," he murmured. "This city has its dangers. Sometimes the enemies hiding behind silk and gold are the deadliest." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the bustling docks. She had been here many times, but returning under the shadow of an ambush changed everything. She felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders, the invisible eyes of the court watching her, judging her every move. And now she had to wonder who in her court had betrayed her. Once docked, Arik and Lyra were greeted by a group of palace guards. Lyra's advisors and court officials were present, bowing formally, their faces polite. But some eyes flicked to Arik with thinly veiled suspicion. Lyra noticed the subtle tension, the quiet whispers. She realized that the court's politics were as dangerous as any battlefield. "Princess Lyra, welcome back," said one of her senior advisors, a man named Valen. His smile was tight, and his words polite, but Lyra sensed something was off. He didn't meet her eyes fully. We heard about the attack. Thankfully, you were unharmed." "Thanks to Captain Dane," Lyra said firmly, glancing at the human who had saved her life. Arik nodded slightly, acknowledging the recognition without arrogance. The palace halls were vast, adorned with intricate carvings that depicted centuries of history. Every corridor seemed to whisper secrets, every statue a reminder of the dynasty's power. Yet despite the grandeur, Lyra felt a chill. Somewhere among the polished floors and grand chambers were people who wanted her dead. Arik followed closely, scanning the room discreetly. His instincts, honed through countless battles and missions, detected subtle signs: a guard lingering too long near their path, a servant's gaze that lingered on Arik more than was normal, and a faint trace of sabotage in the palace's security systems. "Princess," he whispered, lowering his voice, "we need to be careful. Someone here wants to finish what they started, and they're clever. They won't strike openly. They'll use deception, distractions, or perhaps even someone you trust." Lyra's stomach tightened. "Someone I trust could betray me." Arik gave a grave nod. "It happens more often than people like to admit. But we'll find them." Their first step was to secure Lyra's quarters. Arik personally inspected the room, checking for hidden devices, traps, and surveillance. The room itself was luxurious, soft lighting, wide windows overlooking the palace gardens, and a private communication console. But to Arik, the beauty was secondary to security. "There," he said after a thorough scan. "No immediate threats. But remain alert. This palace is large and the enemy may be hiding anywhere." Lyra watched him, admiration and relief mingling with unease. This human, a stranger in a foreign world, had proven himself trustworthy and capable beyond any of her advisors. Yet she could not shake the feeling that the danger was closer than she imagined. The following day, Lyra attended a royal banquet. The hall was magnificent. High ceilings, polished floors, and tables laden with exotic delicacies from across the empire. Nobles from neighboring systems had arrived, their voices mingling in polite conversation. But Lyra noticed the eyes that lingered too long, the subtle nods and whispers. Arik stayed at her side, his posture relaxed but alert, scanning for threats. As the evening progressed, Arik's sharp instincts detected a subtle signal. A waiter carrying a platter moved deliberately too close to Lyra's seat, his eyes flicking toward her with unnatural intent. Without hesitation, Arik placed himself between Lyra and the tray, guiding her subtly to another seat. Princess Lyra followed his lead, her heart racing. "Captain, what did you do?" she whispered. "Just precaution," Arik said quietly. "The threat is real. Someone here tried to act, but I stopped it." The Queen, observing from a distance, noticed the incident. Queen Solara's eyes, sharp and calculating, lingered on Arik. She had always been cautious, wary of outsiders, especially humans. But this human had acted decisively to protect her daughter, using intelligence and speed rather than brute force. Her curiosity and perhaps a hint of admiration was piqued. As the banquet continued, Arik discreetly whispered to Lyra, "We need to investigate. Whoever is behind this will strike again, and likely soon. We have to identify them before they succeed." Lyra nodded, determination in her eyes. "Then we begin." Later that night, under the cover of darkness, Arik and Lyra moved through the palace corridors, careful to avoid surveillance. Arik's human senses and training allowed him to detect hidden traps and secret passages, skills that were unfamiliar and astonishing to Lyra. They reached a lesser-used wing of the palace, where Arik's sharp eyes spotted signs of tampering with the doors and air vents. "They're trying to monitor us," he said softly. "Or they've been planning another attempt." Lyra's heart pounded. "How do we stop them?" "We gather information first. Rushing in blindly gets people killed. Watch and learn, Princess." For the next few hours they quietly observed. They noted which guards acted suspiciously, which advisors avoided certain corridors, and which servants carried messages not meant for the princess. Piece by piece the puzzle began to form. One name in particular kept appearing in subtle clues. Valen, the senior advisor who had greeted them at the dock. Arik shared his observations with Lyra. "Valen has influence, but he's hiding something. He's cautious, but arrogance can be a weakness. We need proof before confronting him." Lyra nodded. Her fear was tempered with resolve. "Then we follow and we watch. If he makes a move, we'll be ready." Days passed and the tension in the palace grew. Arik and Lyra balanced their vigilance with appearances of normalcy. They attended meetings, diplomatic discussions, and ceremonial duties, all the while observing the palace and its inhabitants. Every whispered conversation, every fleeting glance, and every unusual movement became a clue in their investigation. Finally, their patience paid off. Late one evening, Valen met with a small group in a shadowed corridor. Arik and Lyra watched from a hidden vantage point as he handed over a sealed message to an unfamiliar figure. The contents of the message were unclear, but the secrecy and urgency were evident. Arik's voice was a low whisper. "This is it, Princess. This is proof that he's involved. He's planning something bigger, something that could threaten the palace and your life." Lyra's mind raced. "Then we must act, but how?" "We can't confront him openly without endangering ourselves." Arik's expression was calm, calculating. "We use strategy. We make him act prematurely. Once he makes a move, we catch him in the act." The next day, they subtly spread a false rumor within the palace, one that suggested a valuable artifact, supposedly of historical importance, would be displayed in a particular chamber. Valen, thinking he had an opportunity, took the bait. That night he moved with a small group, attempting to steal the artifact and create chaos. Auric and Lyra were ready. Using precise coordination, they intercepted Valen and his conspirators in the palace corridor. Guards, discreetly alerted by Auric beforehand, moved in to secure the area. Caught off guard, the conspirators had no choice but to surrender. Princess Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "Your treachery is exposed. You have betrayed the trust of the throne and endangered my life. Justice will follow." Auric watched, quietly proud. Lyra's strength, courage, and intelligence shone through in her decisive actions. She had learned quickly, absorbing lessons from him yet standing independently as a capable leader. Somewhere in the shadows, Queen Solara observed silently. Her eyes lingered on Auric, noting the calm authority and loyalty that had guided every move. The human had not only protected her daughter, but also helped uncover the court's treachery, and in that moment, the queen realized that this human could become more than an ally. He could be a force that reshaped the future of her empire. As Valen and his co-conspirators were taken into custody, Lyra turned to Auric. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I could not have done this without you." Auric shook his head. "You didn't need me. You did this. I just helped guide the way." But both of them knew the truth. It had been their teamwork, human ingenuity and royal wisdom combined, that had saved the palace and exposed the traitors. The danger, however, was not over. Lyra knew there were still enemies in the shadows, and the political intrigue of the court would continue. Yet for the first time she felt a spark of confidence. She had faced betrayal, survived an ambush, and stood strong in the palace. And beside her, Auric Dane remained steadfast, a human who had not only shielded her from death, but had also become a partner in protecting the future of her people. High above, the stars continued to watch silently, indifferent yet eternal. But in the palace corridors, a princess and a human stood together, ready to face the dangers ahead, their bond stronger, their resolve unwavering, and the attention of the queen ever more focused on the man who had saved the throne. The royal palace shimmered under the twin suns of the Solara capital, its towers reflecting golden light across the city. The upcoming royal celebration promised to be a spectacle. Nobles, diplomats, and dignitaries from across the galaxy were invited. The halls buzzed with excitement, but beneath the elegance and splendor, danger lingered. Captain Auric Dane and Princess Lyra moved through the palace corridors with calm precision. Days of investigation had revealed subtle signs that some conspirators still lingered. Though Valen and his immediate co-conspirators were imprisoned, Lyra knew others may be plotting, using the celebration as the perfect cover. "Captain, the palace is filled with guests. Any misstep could be catastrophic," Lyra whispered as they approached the grand ballroom. Auric's eyes scanned the crowd. "Exactly why we must stay alert. Danger will come disguised, hidden among the noble masks and ceremonial robes." The celebration began, the hall echoing with music and polite laughter. Lyra, dressed in the flowing robes of her royal house, greeted the attendees with poise and grace. Auric stayed by her side, a quiet, vigilant presence. He watched every movement, every whisper, every subtle gesture. Midway through the evening, Auric noticed something troubling. A server carrying a tray of delicacies moved in a zigzag pattern, seemingly avoiding the main crowd. His trained instincts recognized it instantly. The tray contained a hidden device, an explosive small enough to be carried unnoticed. Auric acted swiftly, placing himself between the server and Lyra. With a controlled gesture, he redirected the server's path, leading the waiter into a side chamber where palace guards were stationed. A faint explosion followed, harmless due to Auric's intervention, but the guests noticed and murmured in surprise. Lyra's eyes widened. "Captain, you stopped them." Auric nodded, and revealed the first attempt tonight. "Someone is desperate. This was just a test, a probe. They want to see how I react." Lyra's respect for Auric deepened. This human, whom many in her court had underestimated, continued to demonstrate intelligence, courage, and calm under pressure. She realized he wasn't just a protector. He was an equal partner in survival. Later, as the celebration continued, Auric and Lyra made their way to the private gardens to discuss strategy. "We need to anticipate the next move," Auric said. "The attackers are bold but reckless. They will strike where they expect us to be unprepared." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "We can't let anyone threaten the palace or the empire. We must act before they can. Hours passed. The palace was alive with music, dancing, and conversation, yet the tension beneath the surface grew. Suddenly a commotion erupted near the eastern wing. Shadows darted along the hallways, figures moving with speed and precision. Arik recognized them instantly. Assassins, mercenaries who had infiltrated the celebration. "Princess, stay close," he ordered, his tone calm but commanding. We faced them together. The fight began. The mercenaries were skilled, but Arik's strategic mind and human ingenuity turned the palace into a battlefield on his terms. He used the environment, balconies, columns, staircases, to control the flow of combat, forcing the attackers into tight spaces where their numbers mattered less. Lyra, trained in royal defense techniques, fought alongside him, her movements precise and decisive. They cornered the first group in a side corridor. Arik disarmed one mercenary with a swift maneuver, while Lyra skillfully restrained another using a combination of martial techniques and quick thinking. Their teamwork was seamless, a dance of calculated movements that left the attackers stunned. Meanwhile, the queen observed from a balcony above. Queen Solara's sharp eyes took in every detail: the precision of Arik's movements, the bravery of Lyra, and the effectiveness of their partnership. She felt a rare spark of admiration. Humans, she thought, were underestimated for too long. This one, in particular, had proven his worth beyond any doubt. As the battle intensified, Arik noticed that one of the attackers was attempting to bypass them, heading toward the main hall. "Princess, follow me! We can't let them reach the guests." They moved quickly, using the palace layout to their advantage. Arik anticipated the attackers' route, intercepting them just before they could reach the center of the hall. With precise action, he disarmed the intruder and restrained them until palace security arrived. Lyra caught her breath, her heart racing. "Captain, that was incredible. You saved everyone." Arik shook his head. "We saved them together. Remember, Princess, it's not just strength. Strategy and awareness win battles." The confrontation was over, but the palace remained on high alert. Arik and Lyra had proven themselves, but the lesson was clear. The threat was persistent, clever, and dangerous. The attackers would regroup, and vigilance was the key to survival. Later that night, in a quiet chamber away from the celebrations, Queen Solara requested a private audience with Arik. Lyra accompanied him, curiosity and anticipation evident on her face. "Captain Dane," the queen began, her voice steady but laced with authority, "I have observed your actions tonight. Your loyalty and bravery have protected not only my daughter but the entire palace." Arik bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I am honored to serve and protect Princess Lyra. It is my duty and my choice." The queen's eyes softened slightly. "Humans are often underestimated in our empire, but you have shown courage, intelligence, and unwavering dedication. You have earned my attention and my respect." Arik's expression remained composed, though a faint hint of surprise crossed his face. Recognition from the queen herself was rare, and her approval could change the course of his mission. "Princess Lyra is capable, intelligent, and courageous," the queen continued. "But she is still young. Having someone like you by her side ensures not only her safety, but the stability of the empire. I trust that you will continue to protect her with the same diligence and wisdom you demonstrated tonight." Arik bowed once more. "I will not fail, Your Majesty." As the night drew to a close, Lyra reflected on the events. She had faced betrayal, danger, and the threat of death, but she had survived, and her trust in Arik had deepened. Together, they had confronted the enemies hidden within the palace walls, proving that humans and aliens could work as equals, a team stronger than either alone. High above the city, the stars watched silently. But within the palace, the battle had changed something fundamental. Arik Dane was no longer merely a protector. He had become a symbol of courage, strategy, and unwavering loyalty. A human who had earned the attention and respect of a queen and saved the life of a princess. And somewhere, in the shadows of the court, other threats still lingered, waiting for the right moment. But for now, victory belonged to those who had acted with intelligence, courage, and unity. The morning after the royal celebration, the palace was alive with discussion of the previous night's events. Nobles whispered about the mysterious human who had intervened so decisively, saving the princess and foiling the assassins. Rumors traveled quickly, and by mid-morning, Queen Solara had summoned Arik Dane to her private chambers. Lyra accompanied him, walking silently through corridors that now seemed both familiar and alive with potential danger. But unlike before, she felt a sense of confidence. Together, they had faced betrayal, fought skilled assassins, and survived. She had learned from Arik, and he had proven that humans were capable of courage, intelligence, and strategy. Inside the Queen's chamber, the Queen waited, her posture regal and commanding. She gestured for them to sit. "Captain Dane," the Queen began, her voice steady, "you have proven yourself beyond what I could have imagined. Your loyalty to Princess Lyra, your strategic skill, and your courage have not only saved her life but the security of the palace itself." Arik remained composed, though he felt a rare sense of pride. "Your Majesty, it was an honor to serve. Protecting the princess is my duty, but also my choice." The Queen's gaze softened. "Humans are often underestimated. Many see you as fragile, reckless, or simple, but you have demonstrated something that cannot be ignored. You have wisdom, bravery, and loyalty, qualities that are rare and valuable in any world." Lyra watched, admiration shining in her eyes. "Mother, he saved my life and helped protect the Empire. He has my complete trust." The Queen nodded, acknowledging her daughter's words. "I see that, Lyra, and I also see that this human could be important for the future of our people." She paused thoughtfully. "Captain Dane, I wish to extend an offer. The Solara Dominion faces many challenges. External threats, political tensions, and potential dangers across the galaxy. I propose an alliance. You will serve as an official representative of the human fleet within our empire, assisting in defense and strategic planning. Your presence could strengthen ties between our worlds and help ensure peace." Arik considered the proposal carefully. It was unprecedented, but the potential for cooperation and mutual protection was clear. "Your Majesty, I accept. But my highest priority will remain Princess Lyra's safety and the security of this empire." The Queen nodded. "Good. I believe in action and loyalty, Captain Dane. You have proven both." Lyra stepped closer. "Captain, you've shown me what humans can do: strength, courage, intelligence. I'm proud to stand beside you." Arik gave a small, respectful bow. "And I am proud to serve, Princess. Together, we can face whatever comes next." In the days that followed, Arik began coordinating with the Solara military and advisors. He worked closely,